Hey guys, Jay Norton here once again. And first of all, I would just like to share my t-shirt because my birthday was a couple of months, well, it was a couple of months ago now, but my wife's mum bought me some t-shirts. I turned 35 years old, not really related to the t-shirt. However, she bought me one of those t-shirts that kind of just have like nonsense English on. So it says, let's, I guess, repose. I think maybe it should be the French word reposer. I'm not sure. I don't even know what repose means. And then it says, refreshing wind blows and is comfortable. So there we go. Let's reposer. So today I wanted to make a video about whether it's worth becoming an English teacher in Japan in 2026 edition. And the reason why these kind of videos do need to be made every year is because, of course, the situation around the world and the situation in Japan changes constantly, yearly, hence the yearly videos that need to be made. But I feel like this year, more than any other year. I've lived in Japan for 13 years now, since 2013. And I feel like this year has seen the most changes in a negative way that I've seen. So there are a lot of aspects. And the reason why I'm directing this at English teachers is because even though the career fields that are now accessible to people coming to Japan has grown a lot, especially since I came to Japan. When I first came to Japan, you were either a teacher and then you made your way into like translation if you got good at Japanese. But now you can do basically anything. However, most people are still starting off as English teachers. And the reason is it's like the easiest way to get in still. However, that might change soon. Well, it's not going to change as in easy to become an English teacher. Whether it's worth being an English teacher, I feel like has changed a lot. Now, there are still the same programs as ever, the JET program, and then you've got like ALT, AKIO work. You've got the big ones like Interac, Eon, GABA, Heart, and then there's the AKIO is like Peppy Kids Club. I think Eon also, Eon should have been in AKIO, sorry. And then GABA should have been in AKIO. ALTs, you've also got Borderlink, and then stuff like that. And the biggest issue that I'm just going to start off with is the salary. Not for the JET program, which is like kind of the one that's more associated with the government that does pay pretty well. If you come to Japan as an English teacher, your pay is probably maximum 250,000 yen a month, which, okay, you can convert that into your own currency and be shocked at how low that is. It's not really relevant to your home currency unless you're planning to move back soon and you have no money in your home country, because you're going to have to save some money here to bring that back with you. But 200, well, I can't say numbers today, 250,000 yen, it's livable. It's like you can get by. However, you're not really going to be able to do a lot nowadays. When I came to Japan and I lived in Gunma Prefecture, which is much more rural, I was on, in my first year, 240,000 yen a month. My apartment was 55,000, and then after paying health insurance and pension, and well, actually, when I first came to Japan, you didn't have to actually pay your pension back then. But residence tax and income tax, I was able to save around 40,000 yen a month. I don't think you're probably going to be able to save anything at all. And the reason for that is life is obviously getting much more expensive. Food is way more expensive. Even here in Japan, like, it doesn't seem expensive compared to what you eat back home. But relative to the salary, it is getting tighter. Rice is going up in price. Fruits and vegetables are going up in price. Canned goods, breads, everything is going up in price. And even though it might seem like little increments, it does take the hits. So whereas it is livable and survivable, it's not thrivable. So just be very careful of that. If you, like, for example, if you're from the US and you can save those big, beautiful American dollars and then bring those here, you're going to be living good. So the other issue with ALT work and ACIO work is it is, and this isn't to disrespect anybody, it is bottom of the barrel. It is irrelevant to the scale of the world what your job is. And that sounds very rude, of course, but ALTs are there to serve a purpose, to spread culture and stuff like that. The amount of people who actually will learn English from you is very little. Probably nobody. And that also goes for ACIO. When I worked in Peppy Kids Club, you only taught the kids once a month. And you would have like 12 kids in the class. So, and I think the classes were 50 minutes or 55 minutes. So you would get, if you divided it up into individual time, like 4 or 5 minutes per kid per month. And there's just no way that you're going to be able to do any sort of deep educational impact, have a deep educational impact on people. Now, I teach online. You can look at other videos. I think I've made more videos about teaching online. I have students who take one-to-one lessons with me 2 to 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week. And I can see their progress from beginner to conversational to studying abroad, getting jobs in English. And you can really tailor each lesson to each person. However, when you're doing these big jobs, you have to just follow a plan and you don't really have a whole lot of flexibility. And a lot of people, I think, it's understandable and it's respectable, passionate about education. And I worry that that passion for education and people's love for Japan might get worn down by the low quality of the work that you're provided with. And this isn't to say that you are bad. The situation, the environment, and the materials you're provided with are bad. So that is something to be concerned about as well. You can move into better roles. I know a lot of people kind of say like international kindergartens and stuff like that. The quasi-international schools are not great, but at least you get to make a real impact on their English education because you're with them all the time. You can actually nurture English-speaking children, and that's where you can focus more on your skills as a teacher. Now, the big one that has developed a lot over the past 12 months is Japan's feelings about us as non-Japanese people. Now, I'm going to put a disclaimer here. I am a white man, and I acknowledge that it's way easier for me to live here. I know some people cringe when they hear people talking like that. Of all the foreigners that can move to Japan, I will have it the easiest in terms of the way people look at me, the way students will probably look at me, possible job opportunities, promotion opportunities. To be honest, in 2026, there is still that kind of appearance and gender preference amongst Japanese people. It is much better than it was, but it's not perfect yet. So I acknowledge that, first of all. However, if you are particularly Asian or of African origin, like I don't know how to word that nicely. If your roots are from those countries, like you could be a Chinese American or an African American, it's going to be more challenging for you here. In terms of being maybe an African American, you are going to get a lot of stares, especially when you work in schools. You might get a lot of students who are a bit wary of you. I remember when I used to work together, there was a guy in my team. He was from America, but he was a black man. Well, he still is a black man. But, he also played rugby, which was awesome because you don't see many Americans who play rugby. But there would be times where he'd walk into a classroom and some kids would cry. And of course, that happens to me as well with the small kids, but we're talking like enough that it interrupts the lesson, and often enough that it interrupts the lesson. So, and you're going to get probably stopped by the police more, and it's important to acknowledge that those things happen. The other problem is with, like, for example, Asian Americans and stuff like that. And I specify America because I assume more Americans are going to watch this. It's going to be harder for you to integrate in a weird way because they're not going to see you as a native English speaker as easily, even if you are. Now, there's been a lot of instances, like I've worked with like Canadians who are of Asian origin who have made it, but when they're out in the world, a lot of people just either assume they're Japanese and kind of like not ignore them, but don't treat them as the English teacher that they are, or assume they're Chinese and ignore them completely. And recently, to be honest, in the news, there is lots of reported crime, especially involving Vietnamese people. So if you are like a Vietnamese American, it might be quite tough for you because you are going to get maybe looked at differently based on your race. And it's unfortunate that in 2026, we still have to think about those kind of things. But it's getting worse in Japan, unfortunately. If you use Twitter as a hobby or your preferred social media platform, I would recommend stop, because Japan has become an extremely toxic place, especially on Twitter. Sometimes I just go on there to check what they're doing, and it is horrendous at the moment. They're just posting pictures of foreigners on the train, just saying, oh my God, there's more and more foreigners every day. Japan is broken. And it's not even like foreigners are doing anything bad in that situation. They just exist. And the problem is with Twitter specifically is you get paid for engagement. Therefore, people are just going to say anything they can to get those million views on their tweet just to make about $5 or $10. That's the horrendous world that we found ourselves in. Now, the other issue is the visa fees. I'm talking a lot of negative stuff, but I think it's important that you hear the negative things. But the visa fees are also going up by a lot. It used to be about 4,000 or 6. I haven't done a visa renewal for a long, long time. I've been a permanent resident for about 6 or 7 years. 6 or 7 years right now. So I haven't actually done a renewal for a long time. But the V's maybe they have or they're about to increase a lot. Oh, I just had to take a quick break there because my daughter's playing outside and she came back to get an ice cream. My daughter has a GPS with her, and I noticed that she didn't have a bag, and I was like, "Where's your bag with the GPS?" And she's like, "Oh, it's in the park." I was like, "What's the point of the GPS then?" So where was I? Yeah, the visa fees have increased a lot. A substantial amount, to the point where it will impact your financial situation, because as I mentioned, it's already getting harder to save money as it is. And I think for a 1-year renewal, I think it's close to 20,000 yen. So, and then if you get to 3 to 5, it's way higher. Now, the problem is with this, there's a lot of people who say, well, shouldn't the companies pay for your visa renewal? Yeah, that makes sense. It does make sense. However, they're not going to do that. And the reason for that is, if a company pays for your visa renewal, you're not obliged to stay at that company. You could get the visa renewal and be like, actually, I quit. Because then you know you can stay in Japan because you got the visa. That might not happen. To be honest, that probably won't happen in most cases, but the companies are going to worry that it will. So that's an unfortunate situation. So you're going to have to actively save for your visa renewals. You might get lucky and get a 5-year visa, but then be like, oh my God, I've got to pay 50,000 yen for it suddenly, without knowing that you need to pay that 50,000 in advance. So that's something to be aware of. So there are a few negatives about coming to Japan to teach English. My recommendation is come here for one of two reasons. Don't come here to be an English teacher in the bottom of the barrel ALT or Eikaiwa companies in the long term. You should come here and hope to get into like higher paid not necessarily corporate, but for example, like working in like a company like social media or recruitment, translation, which it doesn't really exist too much anymore. But I've got a lot of friends who just work as like in accounting, receptionists, just doing normal jobs. And even though they might not be the most glamorous jobs in the world, you get to use your Japanese more. You get to be in a Japanese working environment. Of course, there are a lot of people who worry about working in Japanese work environments because of black companies and overtime. Trust me, it's not as bad as it seems if you research the companies properly. But, or just come here for a working holiday, like just a 1 year stint, save some money, come to Japan, have a great time, go home with the experiences. You're not going to get a whole lot from the ALT or Eikaiwa experience, to be honest, nowadays. I think companies are quite standoffish with their employees because they just see them as rotations. They don't really, they don't really try to nurture you and develop you into good employees. They just like get the lessons done and just shut up kind of thing. My recommendations are always study, study, study. Not just study Japanese, but study about finance, study about accounting, study about social media. Like start a TikTok, start a YouTube, start a Substack, learn how to market yourself and stuff like that. Because getting into other fields while working in Japan is going to help you in Japan in the future. So that's kind of my advice there. I am lucky enough that I was able to quit my job as an international school principal a couple of months ago. And now I work freelance, completely freelance, and I'm able to make between 500 and 600,000 yen a month. But that did take a lot of building connections, building reputation, getting my Japanese to a fluent level, and all that kind of stuff. It took time, but I got there. But guys, are you interested in coming to Japan? A lot of you might be quite new because you might be seeing me from something that I'm going to be on tomorrow at the time of uploading this video. But if you've got any questions about the experience, let me know and I'll try and get back to you. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you next time.